Today, guys, we're going to talk about youth development changes that both the Canadian Soccer Association as well as the English FA made to their developmental models and the implications that that has on what we're doing here in the United States. I really hope somebody from US Soccer watches this. So let's go. One thing you see pretty much all the time, and it's cyclical, is this argument between all of the US soccer people about why we don't develop, enough players.
Nothing in soccer in the United States has changed as far as the development of the player and the talent level since 1995.
Why don't we have it? Is it culture? Is it coaching? Is it MLS and USL's fault? Is it US Soccer's fault? Is it everyone's fault? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Okay, I go back to coaching. We want to win everything and be the best at everything. The problem is that trickles down to 6-year-old soccer players, right? And the emphasis for a 6-year-old should be on getting better, not winning soccer games.
And this seems to sort of come about with every big tournament. So we just went through the Gold Cup and, didn't necessarily have our strongest players there, let's say. And so there's always this back and forth between different pundits about, we're not developing players and why is this? And I even have several videos talking about the system and why the system is not good for development. But better than just having, an argument between, two different people is when other countries change what they're doing or are doing something different. We really need to be looking at this. And this isn't a new thing, okay? Let me just say that. What we're going to go over between what Canada and England did, many countries have been doing this. In fact, Germany 5 years ago switched to a model similar to this. These are things that we should be doing as a country specifically if we want to develop players. So here's what the Canadian Soccer Federation released in February. And this is just the press release. So we'll go through this a little bit, but really this is just kind of a little bit of fluff, more of like business speak about, what they're doing and why they're doing it. Really, it comes down to, this can be really best summarized here by this quote from their director. And they're basically saying that they're designing their youth program, and this is U13 and under, the changes that they're making here, designed to create the best possible learning and developmental environment for young players in Canada. Okay, so they're recognizing that they need to make changes in order to foster development. This is the full 8-page PDF that was put out, kind of going in detail on all of their changes. So I just want to highlight a couple of these. The first 3 paragraphs are kind of just talking about, what they've done in the past and talking a little bit about Canada and, its unique sort of soccer climate. But these 6 principles here are kind of how they're choosing to make their changes, okay? And you guys can read those on your own. But if you go down, there's kind of this chart here where they're going by age. So U4 to U6, they call active start. Kind of U6 to U9, they're calling fundamentals. And U10 to U13 is learn to train. And most federations have kind of a naming system like this based on ages. What I want to really talk about here is match format, okay? So this is going to be a theme that we're going to talk about, not just here, but also the changes in the England FA made, as well as kind of my discussion at the end. But the principle here is, following a match day format that is developmentally appropriate for the participants. So let's just look here. So U4 to U6, I'm not sure what informal games mean, but you look here right away, U6, U7, 3v3. Okay, I think if you look at most rec programs, at least that I'm familiar with, they typically start at 4v4. So they're already getting to what will be, one of my main themes and points of this video is we have to go to smaller sided games throughout the youth soccer ecosystem. Okay, and that is from pretty much, in my opinion, U15 down, but I'll get into that later. U8, U9, you can see 4v4 with no goalkeeper, or if they're going to do a keeper, it's 5v5. Now, You can see here U8, U9 in this country is typically, in the United States, is typically 7v7. Okay, so they're already, again, saying we're going to come down and go to smaller sided games. U10 to U11, they're going 7v7. And then U12 to U13 is 9v9. So they're not starting 11v11 to U14. Right now in the United States, 11v11 starts at U13. Some of these other changes, really not going to get into, they've got different field sizes, roster limits, stuff like that. Let's go down here. There's some coaching qualifications, but this is really interesting here. So based on this principle, children register to play soccer and are not to watch others play or spending time traveling. That's really interesting. Teams should strive for fair playing time and limit travel as much as possible. So playing time and positions, you can see this is for all the ages. Fair playing time for all players, coaches targeting a minimum 50% playing time for each player. This is my rule. I mean, if you're in a U13 or under team and they're not doing at least 50% playing time for each player, you're in the wrong team, wrong club. Okay. And then this is interesting too. Players try all positions. Now, how they enforce this, I have no idea. Here's another interesting thing, travel time. Okay. So you can see again in U6 to U13, under 60 minutes each way. I think this is fantastic. Now, I don't know if they're going to run into situations where, they can't find the same, level, within that. I could see some arguments in the States for that, like, we can't find, this level of a team within 60 minutes. But I think the fact that they're just even trying to limit travel is really admirable. And then we go down here, kind of this one. The rostering is very interesting. Okay, let's look at this principle. Talent identification and selection should be delayed as long as possible to provide as many players as possible with the best training environment available. So they don't want to have kids at 8 years old being separated into elite versus premier versus whatever. And this is teams. Now this is again, U6 to U13. Teams cannot be formed using tryouts or similar evaluation methods. Okay, tiering of players is not permitted before U10, and no territorial or regional select teams before U13. So they're really trying to delay this idea of selected players, which is I think admirable and interesting. And then you've got down here, they're not going to keep score, which I have mixed feelings about that. I think that there is an argument to be made about winning and how you teach winning, and score is important and stuff like that, depending on the context and the level, but I'm not going to get into all of that. So those are the changes for the Canadian Soccer Association. All right, so the England Football Association has an interesting kind of click through or scroll through presentation, kind of talking about their changes that I think will be interesting for us to kind of go through a little bit. This looks really expensive, but so they just start out again just talking about some changes they made in 2012, and they think that that's going really well. But now they want to kind of seek the initiative and seize the initiative, and make it better. So, they want to make the future brighter, and again, they're targeting 2026, which is also what the Canada changes. So they're kind of rolling these out slowly for everybody to get used to. And they're really, again, they talk about, their vision for what they're doing, champion children's rights, spirits of the game. Okay, let's get into the actual changes. They also talk about their belief that there's kind of four overriding factors that determine the experience that a child has during youth football, youth soccer. So playing opportunities, coaching, environment, parents, and carers. Okay, so this is, again, everything is leading to this, right? So again, this is just more explanation of kind of these four pillars that they're talking about. But let's get into the key changes, right? So, and again, this is 2026. So here we go again, smaller sided games. So they're introducing 3v3, okay? And so they're doing that at the U7 level, which is pretty similar to what Canada was doing. They are maintaining smaller formats. Okay, this is really the key. And, there are many ways of going about this, some of which we'll talk about at the very end. But the key to youth development, there are many sort of paths to this. They all lead to smaller sided formats at the younger ages. So they're saying here they're not going to move to 11v11 till U14, which again is exactly what Canada was doing. And they don't get into the details on this. There's sort of a discussion that they'll provide more details later, but they're going to change some of the laws of the game. This actually sounds good to me. So they're going to make it what they say is less complex, maybe less restarts, something just to make it more of a child's type game, I think is kind of what they're getting at. So this will be interesting to see what they do here. But I kind of like the direction that this might be going. And so they kind of talk about this is the current match format, all right? And so you can see here they're kind of 5v5, U7, U8. This is a very similar model to what we have here in the United States. 7v7, U9, U10, 9v9, U11, U12, and from U13 and above, it's 11v11. Now they're changing that to where it's now going to look like basically 3v3 starting at the U7, U8 and U9, 5v5, and then U10 and U11, 7v7, U12, U13, 9v9, and U14 and above, 11v11. I would argue maybe just get rid of 9v9. I'm not sure it's really needed. There's really a place for it, but this is a positive direction and something U.S. Soccer really needs to look into. And so this is just showing kind of what it means for your specific age group. But again, these are changes they're making to foster development. Okay, they're not doing this just these two football associations that we're talking about. They're not doing it just randomly. Okay. Again, they talk about the key milestones, and then that there's going to be some more information for us to look at kind of later. As I've said, this is not a new concept. England and Canada are not reinventing some kind of wheel here, and neither does the United States. For years, federations have gone to smaller-sided games. There is a concept called Faninho, which many countries in Europe also use and apply, which is basically a form of a small-sided game in the youth. In Brazil, they use futsal. The concepts of smaller-sided games are increased touches, increased decision-making, more fun, more activity, and in general, it keeps kids engaged for longer. My personal recommendations would be, as far as match format goes, that from U5 to U6, we use 1v1 and 2v2s. U7 and U8, 1v1, 2v2, and then introduce 3v3. U9 and U10, I would recommend 4v4 or 5v5. And then from U11, U12, and U13, go 7v7. And then at U14 or U15, then you go to 11v11. These are small changes. And in the ecosystem of pay to play and the fact that we're probably never going to have promotion relegation, these small changes potentially could make a big difference. And all the pundits who argue about why we're not developing, enough players or enough technical players, the problem is within the youth system. So while Canada and England are making these changes, the United States and MLS, their two big initiatives this year were changing birth year to calendar year and using an app to help the U13 and U14 quality of play metrics at MLS Next. Neither of which could have anywhere near the impact of changing to smaller-sided games would in our youth system. Guys, please comment on what you think about all of this, what England did, what Canada's doing, just smaller-sided games in general, other changes that you could see might help. As always, I really appreciate the support, the subscribers, the likes, and just the general interaction. So I'll see you on the next video.